The nonsense that was just spewed out of your mouth has me disgusted.
I mean, I just think Mutineers look like crap.
They consistently played with our hearts.
What?
Was the respect level really there for Toronto?
That's a wild win.
Your point sucks.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Contesting the Point. And guys, we have finally reached the finale. Hey, clap it up, everybody. Round of applause. Yes. Yes. And today we have our most winningest contestants for the 2020 season. Nameless and Maven have entered the game, 5 wins apiece. Guys, how's it feel to be battling it out for the title today?
I didn't even know I won that much.
I'm just confused that Clint won 5 and it's not Joe in the final. I mean, I only played against Clint once, so I guess that makes sense. But I was expecting to be going up against Joe, but I got a formidable opponent in Clint, so it should be a good one.
Do you think the best episode we could do would be where I was on both sides of this and argue with myself?
No, I actually do not think so. It would just be hot takes and crazy statements about Optic Gaming, and they're out of the tournament, so your prediction
awesome.
is gone
Sounds
wrong.
like a great show.
Goodness. Oh my goodness, Optic Gaming. I really want to talk about that. Maybe we can touch on that later. But guys, the winner of this episode not only gets 60 seconds to pop off at the end of the show, but you'll also get the golden headset sent straight to your door as the champion and the title of Contesting the Point champion as well. So there's a lot at stake, guys. But before we head into this final showdown, let's take one last look at the rules. I'm going to present a headline from the CDL, the playoffs, that is. I'm then going to give a hot take on the story. One of the guests will defend the hot take while the other attacks it. I'll award points for convincing arguments only, and after 3 stories, whoever has the most points wins 60 seconds to pop off in our Astro Listen Up moment. They win the title, they win the golden headset, they win all the marbles. How's that sound to you guys?
Sounds great.
It sounds really nice, Malik.
All right, man. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it. Getting things rolling with our first topic. The final 4 squads for our Champs Weekend have been decided. We've got the Atlanta FaZe dancing with the Dallas Empire in the winners finals, and we've got the Chicago Huntsmen taking on the London Royal Ravens in the losers bracket. There's not much else to discuss, but the question that's on everybody's mind right now: who's going to win it all and take home the championship? My hot take is that the Atlanta FaZe is going to be the team that wins the championship. But Maven, you're on the attack end. I'm assuming you're taking Dallas to win it all instead.
I'm going to be honest with you. At the beginning of this entire event, FaZe are my favorite to win it. I think they've been the best team all year, the most stacked team, the most consistent team. But there's one thing that happened that now worries me. Empire are the other team in the winners bracket final. And the reason Empire, I think, are the team that scare me the most is they're the team that has most consistently been able to close out championships when they get there. Like, they have the most home series wins with 3. When they get to a home series final, they win it. They lost, the one at the beginning of the year to Huntsmen, like forever and ages ago. Was that London? Like, our first home series? Like, it seems so long ago. It's absurd. Every other home series final they get to, in that final, they win it. For FaZe, yes, you've been very consistent. Yes, you haven't missed a semifinal. But you've lost, 3 finals in a row. It's like they're almost like, I don't know, like LeBron, the best team in the league, best player in the league. But when it comes finals time, you don't close it out and win the championship. Like, they just haven't been winning the tournaments. They haven't been closing out. And the team that has been closing it out every time is the other team in the winners bracket final. If any other team was there other than Empire, I think I'm going FaZe. Empire scares me.
Yeah. Oh man, why'd you have to bring LeBron into this as an Ohio boy? That one hurt.
He's an incredible player. He just loses a lot in the finals. I'll tell you.
Fair enough. But you make some good points about Dallas. They've been very consistent as of late, closing out those finals. The FaZe haven't quite seemed like themselves, and they even struggled a little bit in the last round, going up against Chicago. I didn't think they were going to make it out of that one. But they won. They definitely won. Go ahead, Nameless. Weigh in, man. What do you think?
So the FaZe, they've been the most consistent team throughout the season, right? Like, they haven't missed a semifinal. They've been incredible. They have a couple championships. And now you're looking at a team that seems to be improved. They just made it to a grand final where they were in a 2v1 to take it all, and unfortunately they lose that. And coming into this tournament, they play a Chicago Huntsmen team that looks to be new and improved with a better scump, and they still take that in game 5 with players like Major Maniac stepping up. Every single player seems to be at top form. You look at Simp and Abizi at the Toronto home series, they were incredible. Simp was playing better than he did all season long. And my thing about FaZe and the remaining teams in this tournament, They just beat the Chicago Huntsmen, so they seem to have the edge there. They're undefeated against the Royal Ravens, and they are 5-1 on the season against the Empire. The last 3 matches they played against Empire, they have beaten them. The last time Empire beat them was in April or something at the Chicago home series. That's a completely different meta. That's a completely different game that we're talking about way back then. This is champs time. FaZe have been incredible all season. I think that they have the edge on all 3 teams here. And in winner's bracket final, I think they will take it against Empire. Having a player like Major Maniac step up is going to give him that confidence to go up against players like Crim, like Clay. I think they'll take it, and I think they'll take the whole thing.
But weren't like most of those matchups ages ago, if I'm not crazy?
Well, they
like,
just played Empire and 3-0'd them at the Toronto home series.
I feel like weren't a lot of them early in the year? Like the first one was at launch weekend in Chicago.
Well, since their loss,
is Toronto like the only one that's like really recent, or am I blasted?
No, they beat them at the Paris home series, which was the event right before the New York home series. They beat them at Toronto. They beat them 3 times since their loss.
Okay. Well, Toronto, I was trying to think. So Toronto's like the real recent one.
They lost them in April.
All over the place.
They lost them in April, and then they proceeded to beat them in June, July, and August. So that's 3 wins once a month since they've lost.
Pretty convincing.
I don't really think any of that matters. Like once you get to champs weekend, top 4 teams, I think all that stuff kind of goes out the window, honestly.
5-1 record absolutely matters. You're confident against a team. I've played against teams that I've been undefeated against, and you just know going into it like we're gonna beat these guys.
The finals record means more to me. I feel like that's gonna be looming over FaZe a little bit. Like you've been to all these finals, you've come up short over and over and over again. For Empire, you get there and close it out. When you have a player like Clay that has most recently won a championship. I know you could say that on the other side for Simp and Abizi as well, which is one of the more interesting narratives there if that ends up being the final. But I don't know. I can't help but feel like if it was anyone else, if it was London or Huntsmen or Optic or Toronto or somebody else in that winner's bracket final, I think I'd 100% be saying FaZe.
I just look at it as like, I mean, you bring up the Clay thing. Like Simp and Abizi realistically carried him to that championship. If you look back,
Clay's gonna like that point. Clay's gonna.
I mean, he'll even say it like they were an integral part of that team realistically. And then they're 5-1 against them. The confidence is there. I think that 1-0 in the finals where they played them, like that could give them a little bit of hope. But to make them the favorite, I don't think so.
Is there anything to be said about Clayster, his leadership capabilities, and what he offers to a team during this championship run that they're making?
Well,
this is when you need it more than ever, right?
Yeah, I think leadership is oversold sometimes, but I do think when you're talking about a potential grand final, like if it is, let's say it's FaZe versus Empire, yeah, I think having people like Crim, having people like Clay that are veterans that have seen it all, because even though like Simp and Abizi have been there, they've done that. I don't think it's quite the same as like a Clay and a Crim. It's just not like there's something through repetition and being there many times and getting multiple wins. Like there is a difference. So I guess I would give the edge there a little bit. And we've heard the comms sometimes. I've talked to Crowder with FaZe, and I mean, they just sometimes play like idiots. Like there are times where he thinks they're trolling. Like he'll call it like FaZe talk in the comms, or I can't remember how he words it, but it's just like their comms become horrible all of a sudden. It's almost like they're like goofing around. Like I don't think that's going to happen as much at champs, but like they've been prone to just silly plays and mistakes. And if they don't do that, then maybe they'll be fine. But I don't know. It's just such a young team and not like a ton of like true leadership. I don't know. That'd be an awesome final though, if that's what we get.
There's a lot of elements to it, because there's on one hand, there's that element that you're talking about, how it's like the young team and they can get wild in the middle of a series. And you got to keep in mind, if it comes down to finals, it's a best of 9, right? So it's a very long series where anybody can get exposed, right? So if Crim and Clay, where they've been putting it together and frying in some of these series in their 3-0s and 3-1s, can they keep it together for a 9-map series against 5 of the most talented players in Call of Duty? That's the big question, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, you guys both make very good points. I think pointing out Dallas's their championship potential and the fact that they have these leadership on their team, that's a good point that you're making there, Maven. But Nameless, he pointed out that 5-1 record. I think that speaks of volumes about how this matchup can go in our winner's bracket match. So with that being said, I'm going to give this first round to Nameless, making her account at the end of round 1, 7 points to 6. Next topic, we saw some dope-ass games over the playoff weekend. Mini Game 5s, mini Round 11s, and mini burritos were given out. You had Toronto taking down Florida in the winners bracket. Optic Gaming's insane run through the losers bracket. London, they stepped up in a big way, knocking out New York and then getting revenge on Toronto in the losers bracket. The games were very, very sweaty and satisfying. So satisfying that I want to talk about who had the biggest upset in the playoffs thus far. My hot take is that Optic Gaming 3-0ing the Mutineers was the biggest upset thus far. Now, I know Maven's definitely going to throw on his Optic cap for this one. So, Nameless, what other upset this weekend really stood out to you?
All right, so I think London Royal Ravens not only beating New York was an upset because New York has a home series win. Them beating the Toronto Ultra was the biggest upset of the tournament, and I don't think anything else is comparable. And here's the reason why.
What? Those
Toronto,
are like coin flips.
No, Toronto was on such a run, right? Like they beat OGLA, followed by Huntsmen, followed by Empire, followed by FaZe, followed by the Royal Ravens win, followed by the Mutineers win. They took out all the top 4 teams. They won a home series. At that point, when you're on, a 6-game stretch of beating all these teams, followed by that, they lose to Empire in a game 5 where they could have taken the series. It's hard to take or to put Toronto outside of the top 4. Like right after the Empire match, like, okay, they're probably a top 4 team. They have all these accolades, all these wins, and a win at their home series. London beating Toronto, to me, is a huge upset at this tournament. I think everybody was predicting Ultra to win that. Everybody was on the side of Ultra. For them to come out and win the domination against the Ultra, having been the second worst Dom team all season long. We're talking about they were 9-21 in domination going into the series. They win the Dom. Shawnee turns up, has an incredible series. I think that's the biggest upset of the tournament.
Yeah,
okay. All right.
That was all horrible nonsense. I didn't listen.
How was that horrible nonsense? They were on a 6-win streak.
You ever watch that show? You ever watch that show Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah.
You guys ever watch that? Remember the first episode where it kind of broke down the universe and showed that big map? And it showed how long human beings have existed. It was like this tiny little 1-minute fraction on the calendar. That's basically how long Ultra have been good. Like let's not blow this up into Ultra being some top dominant team. Both of those were
what did they not do?
If you ask basically anyone, but if you talk about either London versus New York or London versus Ultra, those are maybe 60-40 matches, maybe. Dude, think about Optic versus Mutineers. Not only did Mutineers just beat them twice in London when Mutineers weren't playing well. That's after their June spree. They just smoked Optic twice. Optic is a bottom 4 team starting the losers bracket versus a top 4 team all year. Comparing that to the nonsense that was just spewed out of your mouth has me disgusted.
Okay, now let me reply to this. So, let's talk about Florida for a second. They have looked horrendous for the last month, right? They dominated June.
3 of their 5 losses were to Empire.
They dominated in June. Okay, but they also played Optic Gaming LA a month or so ago, and it went down to Game 5. They won. It went down to Game 5, but they won, and they've continuously got worse. Since then, they've gotten smoked 3-0 by multiple teams. They've lost
They lost to Empire.
They lost 2 matches back-to-back, bumped out in their group. They are 2-6. Since that last match versus Optic Gaming. I do not think Florida was a team coming into this that people are like, they're going to cruise. They should absolutely beat Optic Gaming. We're talking about Optic Gaming, a team that was on the upwards trend versus a team in Florida who have been trending downwards.
Everyone in the world thought that was an upset. Everyone.
I thought Florida was going to win that. Personally,
I mean,
everyone did.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at the stats. I'm looking at the teams, and Florida was losing games heading into it. Going into that series.
Was the fear factor? What
do you mean? What do you mean just to Empire? Hold on. What do you mean just to Empire?
That was 3 of their 5 losses were to Empire in that bad stretch they had.
Don't add a loss. 2 of those.
It was 3. I'm gonna pull up the stats because I was looking at them before the match.
Either way, who else did they lose to? Clinton? Who else did they lose to? They lost to Ultra during that, right? They lost to London Royal Ravens. They've lost 2 teams.
So you're telling me they lost to 3 solid teams? Holy hell, that's incredible! Impossible.
But we're talking about Ultra, who was on a 6-game win streak with their only loss after that 6-game win streak to Empire in a Game 5. A team that just won a home series.
And you just picked them to win the event. That's insane, man. They lost Ultra too.
I mean, Ultra were looking incredible. They were looking downright incredible. That to me is
they
the
were.
Listen,
they were, but was the respect level really there for Toronto? I would think New York was sitting in the losers bracket, hoping to face off against Toronto.
If the conversation was more about like the surprise of London, not like one upset, like more the surprise of them getting top 4. And I would be with you 100% because them getting into top 4 is ridiculous. But none of their matches are that crazy of an upset compared to Optic over Mutineer, especially the fashion that they did it. They just 3-0 smoked them. Like that wasn't even close. They just came in and stomped them.
I mean, we're just talking about them making it. Them beating New York followed by Toronto is impressive in and of itself. Like that, to me,
you have to use 2. You're using 2 matches too, which is ludicrous because we're talking biggest upset. You're using 2. So
well, no, that's why I sold out that's why I sold out the Ultra match, because Ultra were on in a crazy stretch. They had a ton of confidence, and then they lost to the Royal Ravens. Like, to me, that's impressive that London were able to win that, especially with the caveat of them winning the domination, being the second worst dom team in the league. Like all those things comboed together. That's a wild win.
Just wasn't as impressive as Optic over Mutineers. Your point sucks.
I mean, I think Mutineers look like crap. I think they look like crap, and for Optic to win that, I was not that surprised at all.
3-0 was a little bit nuts. But you know what? Nameless, you argued this very valiantly. I don't necessarily think New York and London, when they were sitting in the losers bracket getting ready to face off each other, they were looking up at the winner's side of the bracket thinking, yo, we'd much rather face off against Dallas than Toronto. I think they were hoping for Toronto to lose that game so they'd have to face off against Toronto. I don't think the respect or the fear level was quite as high for them, which is why when London actually did beat Toronto, I wasn't as surprised as I was when Optic went up against the Mutineers. And for some reason, even after this argument, I still have not quite reached that conclusion, despite the good points you made. I'm giving this round to Maven, 5 points to 4. It was a close match. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and one more thing. I mean, Ant with his whole 5-1 phase of our empire thing. Well, Optic had never beaten Florida. Florida were up 3-0 in that, which I mean basically means by your logic that was impossible for them to win. How'd they manage to do that? Some call it an upset.
I would never use the word impossible. I'd say unlikely. And I mean, to your point, like, yeah, there are matches where people are unlikely. They probably shouldn't win, and they end up winning it. And that's the spirit of champs, right? Champs is wild. But all we have to go by is history. So that's where I lean.
Right. This was a close between the both of y'all, but I'm giving this one to Maven, which brings our count at the end of 2 rounds to 11 apiece. And going into the final round for all the marbles is anyone's game. All right, final topic of the season for all the marbles. We've spoken a lot about teams who really turned it up here in the postseason, but let's take a look back at teams that struggled a little bit. No shade to anyone personally, of course, but there's been a few teams who have failed to perform as well as we thought they would this year. You have Florida, one of the teams that we expected to make it to the Final Four, going out 0-2 in the playoffs while only taking 1 map off of Toronto. You have the LA Gorillas, who, pretty much failed to accomplish anything this season. And even with both of these teams falling short of expectations, we had one team that on paper definitely disappointed me. So my hot take is that the Seattle Surge had the most disappointing season out of all the CDL teams. Nameless, I believe many of us had the Surge doing a lot more damage than they did this year, but who else failed to live up to expectations this badly?
All right, so I'm going to come at this from a different angle. I think it was Minnesota with the most disappointing season. Before I get into the Minnesota details, the reason I don't have Surge is because I think we quickly all learned that Surge was going to be terrible this season. Early on, they were terrible at Search and Destroy. They couldn't get a win. They were making these questionable decisions like benching players like Enable, who is historically one of the best players in COD. And it just looked like it was pandemonium going on the side of Seattle. So I think they knew, as well as the community, that Surge was not going to be good this season. On the other hand, you have a team in Minnesota who was incredible in the beginning of the year. They made it to 2 grand finals, one on land, coming into online, they make it to another one, and then from then on they proceeded to not make it to a single semifinal the rest of the season. We're talking about a team who was on a 10-game losing streak to end their season out. They had a top 5 player in the game, arguably, in GodRx for the first 4 events of the season, and then they go to online. He's no longer that player. Just think about the level of disappointment and all the hype that was built up for this Minnesota team and their fan base and the players on this squad. To get squashed completely by terrible performances for the rest of the whole season, you have everybody hoping that they're finally going to put it back together and make another run. They don't even come close. They don't make it to a semi. They sub out their player who was that top 5 for a player in Exceed, hoping to make this one valiant last run at champs where they proceed to get double bopped out. I mean, they did so well in the beginning of the season that without making it to a semi, they were still top 8 in the standings. It's just mind-blowing and extremely disappointing that a team that looks so good to fail like that.
Oh man, Gary V is not going to like that one at all. Nameless, but you do make some good points, man. I remember the Minnesota was the first team that actually was able to take some rounds in a game off of FaZe after FaZe was like pretty much unblemished.
Yeah,
and so after that, we really thought Minnesota was going to be the team. That's a really good one you threw out there. Do you have anything to say to counter that, Maven? Can you defend my hot take on the Seattle Surge?
Those were some really fun points, Ant. Seattle Surge were so bad that Karma retired. And I'm done with my points.
That's it. That's all you have to say. That's all you really need to say.
That's a great point. I mean,
that's all you really need to say.
I'm done. No, I'm done. Yeah, we move on with the show.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on. Seattle Surge. They were very disappointing. A lot of people expected a lot from them. Players retired. Whereas Minnesota, they consistently played with our hearts, the hearts of their fans, making us think they were a top 5 team, only to just go out so bad with that crazy losing streak. With that being said, I'm giving the game to Nameless. He gets 4 points this round of Mavens 2, bringing our final count 15-13. Nameless is our contestant, the point champion for 2020.
Oh man.
Oh man,
that golden headset. Can't wait to put it up on my Maven shrine, the greatest esports commentator of all time.
I just, I thought quality over quantity there. Like Ant made 10 really not great points. I made one really good point. I thought I had it.
He made good points. If they were bad points, if they were bad points, I would have been like, get out of here, bro. Get out of here.
They were okay.
We had a great season, man. It was a good season.
Yeah, it was a crazy season.
Yeah. Just a great season of Call of Duty overall. And it's not over yet. We still got more to go. But Nameless, you got 60 seconds to pop off, man. And you know what? For consolation, Maven, I would like you to weigh in on some things that happened over the weekend, anything that stood out to you. But we're gonna start with you, Nameless.
Yeah, let's kind of just open like a roundtable discussion on that match that we saw. Like that was probably, up there with the best games we've ever seen in Call of Duty history. I think, in light of everything that happened this year with switching to online and frustrations, like this tournament has been incredible. That last 2 days that we just had was unreal. The game 5s, the round 11s, and just the Optic versus Chicago story and Scump avenging, the kingdom that he built. It was so special.
No, it was a crazy series, crazy final round. Like God, man, I just keep thinking of the what ifs because I felt part of me pulling for Optic for the Cinderella story, part of me pulling for Huntsmen for like the fan base and everything. Like I was like torn both directions, and I was like, whoever wins, man. Let's have some fun. But like at round 11, like all year, what do we talk about with Optic, man? Even back to like the cap days, they love to like smoke mid and hop up to the second story at B. They did it all the time. They were one of the few teams that did it early. I thought that was what they were doing. I thought that was their go-to, but I don't know what happened exactly, but they got no one second story. Things end up falling apart. And one thing I'm curious about your take on this, Ant. I was seeing some real just dumb comments online yesterday. Like people that were like basically saying TJ got world starred. I'm like,
no way.
The guy got caught full sprinting to somebody on a heady. And like maybe he hit a hip fire bullet first, but like, dude, if TJ would have won that, he would have literally world starred.
Right. He didn't know where he was coming from, and then he hits the corner, and I think he just reacted and hit him with a random bullet. But that 100%. Is an incredibly hard
that was a hip fire. I would bet any money that was a hip fire bullet that hit like 100%. Like people are like TJ shot first, he got on. Like what?
Yeah,
what are you watching?
Just. Those teams were on such a level playing field there that from the beginning to the end of the round, it just came down to these crazy little decisions. Like Pristini pushing up and dying. I saw people arguing that was a good play. I'm sort of on the side where that wasn't a good play because Optic should have won the round. But you can dissect that round from start to finish.
They won, so it looks like a good play, but they shouldn't have won. So I guess I get the argument that he got a lot of information, but it is never good to be first blooded. That is not a thing that exists in any game. game. Like, getting first blood is not a good thing. So, no, I don't agree with that take at all. But obviously, he got a lot of information. They ended up reacting to it, and we can talk all day.
When I saw that.
Well,
I thought it was the round was over. It was
it should have been
if
like what Clint said.
To A, or if Optic get in the top window, if they get in the top window, they win the game. Dude, like,
or kill Scump. I mean, it was just
someone was hit by a nade or something. There must have been a nade or something I missed. Like, somebody got drilled with something. Like, because
I was gonna ask, do you think because people were expecting them to do that, they decided
no,
not to do it?
I think where they were still mid, like somebody probably tossed like a frag or a tactical over the top and it slowed them down a little bit. Otherwise, they probably would have hit right. Like something happened delayed. And I'll be honest with you, I was fried last night. I streamed right after. I haven't like gone back and like watched it and dissected it. But something happened or some miscommunication where they didn't get into top. And that's probably going to be pretty painful. But I still think you feel pretty good if you're Optic. Like you got what, 5th, 6th. I don't think a lot of people expected you to. You were one round away, 1v1 away from making it to championship weekend. And
I think they redeemed their season for sure. With their playoff run.
I don't think Slasher will view it that way.
He might not view it that way, but they won over some hearts of a lot of fans. I think
so. They showed a lot of grit for sure.
Yeah. End of the day, that was one of the best Call of Duty matches I think I ever watched.
People were asking me that a lot last night when I was streaming. Like, and the one that came to mind, like, there's been a bunch. You can think back to like all the best of 7s back in AW with FaZe Optic, or you think back to the one that comes to my mind is like the Stage 1 playoff final for World War II when it was FaZe Optic. FaZe Optic that went 10 map. No, the Rise Optic won though too from Black Ops 3. Like, there've been a lot of crazy finals. But what hit me though, that pained me, is some of the greatest finals of my commentary history, just for me personally. If you look at those 3, none of them had a crowd. And it kills me.
Yeah, that's
because
tough.
this year we had to be online. Stage 1 finals from World War II was at the Columbus studio. The other one was in the ESL Burbank studio, which had like 100 fans there or something. But I haven't had, like, there have been some good finals at events, don't get me wrong. But like, when I think of like maybe like my top 5, I feel like none of them had crowds. And man, that kills me. It kills me.
Maybe next year. Next year. Man, that was a great discussion, and what a way to wrap up Contesting the Point for the season. I just want to take a second to thank you, Maven. Thank you, Nameless, for you guys' continued hot takes and spicy arguments throughout the course of the season. Thanks to all the other casters who have joined us here. Thanks to Astro Gaming for allowing us to do this. And thank you to the fans who have tuned in all season long for all the craziness here on Contesting the Point. But guys, the season, it's not over yet. We got the playoffs champs weekends coming up. Starting on Saturday at 11 a.m., the London Royal Ravens are going to be taking on the Huntsmen. You're not going to want to miss it this weekend. It's going to be crazy. But until then, guys, it's been a great season. I hope you all continue to do well, and we'll see you later.